welcome to our latest webinar, which is about keeping in touch with customers. So it may seem a bit obvious, but over the course of COVID, it's been quite clear that a lot of businesses aren't keeping in contact with their customers as much as they could be. So we're going to talk about a few different areas: customer communications, types of customer communications, approaches to it, automation, pitfalls, all sorts of different bits and pieces. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. James is monitoring that and will interrupt me if he finds a question for me to answer.
I will indeed. Welcome, everybody.
So, should have swapped the slide around slightly because I'm going to be doing pretty much all the talking during this one. But between us, we've been doing this kind of thing for over 30 years. I tend to take the marketing presentations and webinars primarily because that's my background, but James knows a lot about it as well, so I'm sure he'll be able to jump in if I'm saying anything strange. So let's just look at this for a second and talk about why customer communications are so important. You've probably seen the marketing funnel or the sales funnel where customers, well, prospects start at the top and they move through the funnel, come out the bottom as customers. HubSpot have created this flywheel instead of the funnel, primarily because it recognizes that customers can actually influence whether people come into the top of the funnel or not. So if you've got angry customers, people who really don't rate your service, they'll tell other people how they feel. And what that can do is be a barrier to new prospects coming in because they've heard negative things about you from someone that has worked with you. And on the flip side, if someone's had a great experience working with your business, they can become a promoter and help draw new people into what used to be the top of the funnel. So recognizing that customers are a key part of the marketing machine, the flywheel, is really important because we need them to be on our side so that they draw people in rather than, putting up roadblocks. So this is just a really good reminder that customer communications are actually part of marketing. It's not a case that marketing hands over a customer to sales and then to delivery and just ignores them forevermore. Marketing should still be involved in the customer journey right through from cradle to grave. So, went with an on-brand color schemed COVID, but what am I talking about here? So keeping in touch with our customers is way more important during dramatic events. So we sent regular emails to our clients at the start of COVID and during the whole process because we wanted to let them know what we were doing, what impact it would have on our service, which luckily, as we're a tech company fully set up to work anywhere, was, negligible impact. In fact, I'd say no impact on our service. But keeping in touch, letting them know what was going on, and then as lockdown started to be eased, letting them know what the impact of that would be on how we work with them, also really important. And what we found was a number of our clients thanked us for doing so. And a few even said that we were the only provider they work with to reach out to them during this time. And what that meant is they feel like we care about them, which we obviously do, but they now know and they can feel that, and they know that we're not just going to leave them in the lurch or keep quiet when something's going on. Obviously, global pandemics don't come around every day, but it's about the crisis. There's some kind of crisis, and it's not like crises are going to stop happening. So reach out early, reach out as often as necessary. We didn't send weekly updates after the first few weeks because the pace of change had reduced. What we did was we reacted to those events and said, right, the government's now saying we should do this, so we should let people know what we're doing as a result. So it's really important to stay in touch. You might want to scale back your other activities so you're not overloading your customers. That's something we did. We had a few marketing emails planned out, and while they weren't quite tone deaf under the circumstances, the COVID updates were far more important, and we needed people to receive those and not get overwhelmed with how much content we were sending. So let's look at...
Sorry, just one of the questions was what level might be too much content, do you think?
So that's a really good question. And we do actually have a slide on that later on about the frequency with which we communicate with customers. So I'm going to hold that thought. Otherwise, I'm just going to preempt that entire section of the presentation. But yeah, fantastic question. And the answer will be different in a crisis situation compared to a normal situation. We'll cover that. So phone calls, pretty standard customer communication tool. It's also quite a traditional tool, and it's less commonly used now. How often do your providers, people you work with, call you versus send you an email? So it's actually standing out more. It's the same as getting a letter through the post. It used to be that email was new and snail mail was old. So you got a load of snail mail, email stood out, and now it's the other way around. If I get something through the post, it's quite exciting. The same is true with phone calls. Now, depending on how many customers you have, you may not be able to call everyone, and you may not be able to call everyone regularly, and that's fine. What you should do, however, is extend that courtesy more regularly to your highest value clients, however you define your top tier clients. Maybe size, maybe revenue, maybe the impact they have on your business. All clients are valuable. I'm not suggesting anything of the sort that they're not, but we do have to be commercial here. And if you have time in your calendar to make 5 calls a week and you've got 500 customers, you can't call everybody. So work out, it may be the 80-20 rule. James is a big fan of the 80-20 rule. Chances are 20% of your clients contribute 80% of your value. It's not always that hard and fast, but it's a pretty good rule to work by. So look at your customer database. You don't want to feel like you're ranking customers, but like I said, you do have to be commercial. And those that have the highest impact on your business, and if they were to be unhappy or to disappear, that is the category that you really need to be making sure you check in with. And like I said, phone calls will really stand out. But then we've got email. So this is pretty much the main one. It's the main way people communicate nowadays, particularly with customers and with prospects. So we need to think about how we're doing our emails. So there are a couple of different kinds of emails I'm going to talk about. So there's marketing emails and service emails. You can still send marketing emails to your customers. Just because they're a customer doesn't mean they're not still interested in some of the marketing that you're doing. Service emails are obviously much more related to the delivery of the service that you are providing to your customers. So one thing I want to touch on here is GDPR, because I know a lot of people worry about it. A lot of people are concerned that they can't send customer emails or they can't send marketing emails because of GDPR. So there are a couple of different areas where it's absolutely okay to send emails. So service delivery, if you need to send an email in order to deliver the service that someone has purchased from you, you can absolutely send them that email. There is no barrier to doing so. It is a key part of providing what you have sold. And then the other area in GDPR that allows for email sending is legitimate interest. So if you believe that someone is legitimately interested because of a few areas, they've signed up, they've given consent, or they're a customer or a prospect that genuinely would have a legitimate interest in your content, then you can send it to them. Now, this is a little bit more tricky if you look at the differences between B2B and B2C. So B2C, proving a legitimate interest is a bit harder. You're generally dealing with people's personal emails, and the barrier is a little bit stronger there because I might legitimately be interested in new technology. I just bought an Oculus Quest, but that doesn't mean every person who sells technology can assume that I'm interested in theirs. Whereas in a B2B sense, you have a much stronger legitimate interest argument. Plus, you're dealing with people's business emails rather than their personal emails, and that tends to be an easier sell. But ultimately, you can send emails to customers and to prospects. What you have to do is respect any unsubscribes. If someone unsubscribes, even if you think they're legitimately interested, it's time to back off. Now, one of the key areas with email is to send useful content. A lot of businesses will send me content that is all about them. We've done this, we've done that, aren't we fantastic? And I'm not that interested. The ones that get me to read their emails and maybe even share them with other people, which is the ultimate goal, are the ones that send me something that's really useful to me. So they know what I'm interested in, or they have something, a high value piece of content that I can actually do something with. It may be a blog post, it may be a white paper, it may be an ebook, it may be a survey that they're running, but it's of interest to me, and that makes me pay attention to it. So think about what your audience is interested in. Think about the content that will matter to them. If it's all self-promotion and the people receiving your emails don't see a use for it, then you'll lose them. Unsubscribes will tell you if people aren't interested. They'll also highlight if you've got some frequency issues, which we'll talk about later. But if you send an email and it's the third email in a row that's complete self-promotion and you get a load of unsubscribes, chances are your content is not useful to your audience. So how do we make sure it is useful to our audience? Segmentation. So segmentation is getting your database and breaking it into segments that have shared interests so that you can send highly relevant emails to those individual segments. So for example, we segment our database by customer type, the industry that they're in. We segment by whether they're a tech customer, a marketing customer, or both. And so if we have a tech customer, we're not going to send them emails about digital marketing. We might include a little bit because obviously this is a sort of cross-sell opportunity, but they're interested in tech. That's what they're with us for. That's the content that we need to deliver to them. So look at your database and work out how you can segment it so that you've got like-minded groups. Like I said, it could be the services that they have. It could be, if you're doing net promoter scores, the net promoter score result. So you've got people who are promoters, detractors, and maybe neutrals. You could segment by that, and you know that you need to communicate differently with the detractors than the promoters. You very much need to communicate differently with them, because if you send happy, excited emails to a detractor, it's going to make them less likely to change their mind. It's going to upset them. I have a really good example of this when I worked at TUI. I was working on the content for the rebrand from Thomson. And obviously TUI is a massive company, it's FTSE 100. We had an enormous database. And during the rebrand, we wanted to send emails to different types of client, different types of traveler, based on what mattered to them and what their concerns about the rebrand might be. So we ended up, I think, with 32 different segments. And we grouped some of those because it turns out while their segmentation was different, the messaging that would appeal to them would be similar. But we still had 12 different types of email going out to our database. We were able to talk to, people who went on family holidays about the family elements. We were able to talk to older couples about some of the really interesting things happening in the hotels aimed at older travelers. So being able to do that, we had a really, really good uptick in people interested in our content. We had great click rates and view rates because that content was relevant to those people. Non-segmented emails that went to pretty much everybody got half the engagement that these highly segmented emails did. So it's a really important element of customer communications, more so even than your marketing emails, because your customers are already with you. You should have more data about them. So if you take nothing else away from this, take this, go segment your database. I want to talk a little bit about automation. So a lot of automation is thought of in terms of marketing communications, but you can also automate a lot of your customer communications. You do have to have the right setup, the right CRM and marketing tools. So we're a HubSpot Gold partner. We use HubSpot for this, and it's got some amazing sequences and workflows and automation tools that just make life so much easier and allow us to communicate with our customers in a way that matters to them, is meaningful to them, but doesn't take up a ton of time. So again, if you've got that limited time in your day, but you've got a lot of customers you want to contact, and you want to contact them in a way that makes sense to them, automation is a really great way to do that. So we use workflows for all sorts of things. So let's say a customer is due an account meeting. It's been, however long since their last account meeting, it's time for another one. We can trigger a workflow that can do any number of different things. So we can either send a task to the account manager to say, hey, you need to call this customer, they're due an account meeting. We can send a task to book the meeting. We can send an email directly to the customer, bypassing having to set tasks for the account manager altogether, and send an email that says hi, and then drop in a personalization token so that it says, hi, James. We can even drop in dates of previous activity. So we last met on such and such a date. Even better, we can then drop in a meeting link. So we've got meeting links. It's something we can do in HubSpot. You can do it in Microsoft as well, Microsoft Bookings. And some people use Calendly. You have a link. The person clicks on that link, goes to a page where your calendar is available to them, and they can just book directly in. That means you don't have 7 emails going back and forth saying, can you do Tuesday at 10? No, I'm busy on Tuesday. Can you do Thursday? No, I can't do Thursday. And, all that back and forth that, again, takes up time. Have this workflow trigger, say, right, James, you're due an account meeting. Here's an email that says, hi, how you doing? Time for our account meeting. Please book directly in my diary. Give me a call if you have any issues. That way, you've automated the whole process. You get a notification to say, James has booked something in your calendar, and you know when that account meeting is without having to go through and check all of those dates yourself. So that's a really powerful automation. And there are other workflows, other different ways you can do these things. You can trigger a workflow when it's been 6 months since the customer became a customer. You could have it, we haven't spoken, there's been no activity with this customer for however long. It's 2 months before their renewal. Trigger a task for the account manager to give them a call. All sorts of different ways to automate that customer communication so that not only is it easier for you, it's also better for your customers. So they're getting personalized service without you having to personalize everything. It's a win-win. You can also create sequences. So a sequence of emails that goes out. If someone replies to a sequenced email, they don't get the next one. So you don't have to worry that they've said something and now the next one's going to go out and it's completely irrelevant. But, a keep in touch sequence is a great way to just keep sort of dripping that contact. Just send a personal email every few weeks to say, do you need help? Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can do for you? Those kind of automations are extremely powerful in building that customer trust. Obviously, you don't tell them that it's all automated, but we all know how busy people are, and making sure we maintain that communication without it taking up an entire work week is really important. And that's why automation allows us to do that. So another element of customer communications I want to talk about is video. So we use video a lot. We use video to talk to prospects. We use video as part of our sales process. We actually ran a webinar about that very topic very recently. We use video on LinkedIn to just talk to everybody. But we can also use video to talk to our customers and our clients. There's something quite powerful about seeing a person in front of you. And even if you're not in the same room, it gives that much more personal touch. So let's say you've signed up a new client. Send a video from the account manager introducing themselves. Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm going to be your account manager. I'll put all my details in the email, but I just wanted to say hello. Particularly powerful right now when we're onboarding customers remotely. We haven't necessarily met everyone in person. it gives a much more personal connection than just an email. If there's some big news, preferably customer affecting or something that's going to be of interest to them, a video from, say, the CEO sharing that news. Hi, we've just announced a new feature, or we've got a new service delivery method that's going to make your life easier. You know, it might be from the CEO, might be from the technical director, it could be from anybody, but that visual impact is much, much stronger with video. If you're using them as kind of an account management tool, again, we look at how busy people are, how many customers you need to speak to, and you might have some slightly more personalized ones for your top tier, and it's still personal, but slightly less for everybody else. So your top tier customers, you might say, hi James, it's Natalie here, just wanted to let you know, blah, blah, blah. For everyone else, it might be, hey, how are you? It's Natalie here, I wanted to send you a quick video to let you know. So it still feels quite personal because I'm still talking directly to you. I'm looking at the camera, I'm talking to you. I just haven't used your name. That means I can use that particular video for a lot of people. Whereas the much more personalized ones I use for one person. We use a tool called Vidyard to do this. And if you're interested in Vidyard, let us know. We've just become one of the first few UK partners. But what it allows you to do is send that quick personalized video super quickly. It's really easy to use. And now that we've all been on Zoom so much, we're starting to get a lot more comfortable seeing our faces on screen. So it's a tool where, like I said, you can very quickly set up, run a little video, say hi, and then get a link that you embed in the email with a thumbnail. You can even choose to do an animated thumbnail. So I might wave at the start of the video, and that will put a little bit of movement in that email, which entices people to click on it a bit more. You also get analytics data about how many people have watched the video, how many of the videos have been watched, which is really useful because then you can start to test different, you know, wave with two hands or hold up a little sign that says hello, or, you know, all sorts of different approaches that you can then see, oh, that approach gets way more views than the other approach. I'm going to do more of that. Test and measure is hugely important in any kind of marketing and communications. So definitely having that data gives us the opportunity to test and measure video content, which is something that can be really challenging. I could very easily go off on a tangent here, but I'm not going to. So social media, possibly a lot of you see this as a tool for engaging with people who aren't yet customers. You know, it's a promotional tool, it's a publishing tool, but it is definitely an area where your customers still are. They still spend their time there, and you should be engaging with them on social as well. Let's face it, unhappy customers are noisy. If they can't get hold of you, they'll comment on your posts. And all of a sudden, a great post that you've put up promoting some content is derailed by 2 or 3 unhappy customers saying, well, yes, but you still haven't fixed my whatever. So keeping your customers happy so they don't do that is step 1. But making sure that you are active on social media and responsive on social media. So obviously you want to be part of the conversation. You don't want to delete comments or just ignore them. Ignoring them is the worst thing you can do. What you want to do is try and get the negative comments off social media as quickly as possible. So thanking them for their input, apologizing that they haven't been able to get hold of you, and providing an email or asking them to DM you their phone number so you can speak to them personally. Because if they've done that once, they'll do it again, and they will be a detractor and they will be noisy. You know, we all know the quotes and statistics are different every single time you hear them, but an unhappy customer will tell 8 people, a happy customer might tell 1. So keeping that off social media is really important. And on the flip side, where you've got people talking positively about your business on social, you want to hear that, you want to see that, and you want to participate in the conversation. So if James posts on his Facebook, I'm looking for recommendations for an IT company, and someone says, oh yeah, I've got IT support through SpiderGroup, they're absolutely amazing. And someone else says, oh yeah, SpiderGroup, they're pretty good. Obviously they'd say we're better than pretty good, but you know. And what you would then want to do is pop up as a SpiderGroup page and say, hey, thanks guys, I really appreciate you putting us forward. Hi James, we'd love to have a chat with you. Here are a few things that we can help with. And you're thanking the people who are promoting you and engaging with a new potential prospect. And that's kind of how the flywheel is working. You know, those customers are drawing in new customers. Also, if you've got customers on social media and they're posting content, share their content, make them feel loved. You know, give them a reason to think, oh, SpiderGroup are really nice. They like my stuff. And it doesn't have to be from the business page. If you've got someone who is very much the face of your company, it could be from their page. But interacting and engaging with your customers is a really good way for you to stay in their minds as a positive force. So, you know, even if you don't share their content, like it, comment on it, you know, maybe tag someone else, say, oh yeah, so-and-so, you might be really interested in this. It may not be you speaking directly to that customer, but it is still a form of customer communication. It's still keeping you in touch with your customers, keeping you in their mind, so that when they get to renewal time, they're not thinking, what do we really do with these guys? You know, is there any point? You're just building that relationship in a variety of different ways, which is a much more natural and engaging way to do that. So this one might seem a little bit off the wall, and it depends on if you do trade shows as to whether this is particularly relevant, but a lot of people do. I know they're not really happening right now because of COVID, but hopefully they will come back. They came back after the financial crash, and so yeah, they are a staple. And this is another area where people tend to think about it for non-customers, you know, bringing in new prospects. But actually they are a great way to show some love to your customers as well. So if you're going to a trade show and you've got a product launch, make the first hour customer exclusive and invite all your customers to come along. They will absolutely feel the love that, you know, they're getting something special. And the other people walking around the exhibition will go, oh, what's so special about being one of their customers? What are they getting that I'm not? And it builds that sense of anticipation and that sense of excitement around your company. It's a technique I've seen used a couple of times, and it's really effective. I know I've sort of felt left out by not being a customer of a particular company doing something really cool. You know, that's not to say you can't do cool things for your prospects as well, but actually prospects seeing cool things happening for your customers is almost better, because, you know, how many times have you been to a trade show and you've picked up, you know, a bit of swag, and it's very cool swag, got some great stuff, but I'm not really that excited about the company. I'm just excited about my brain stress ball, for example, that everyone in the office tries to steal. Whereas if I walk past and all of your customers are getting brain stress balls, for want of a better example, and they're not available to just anybody walking around, you have to actually be part of this company, this group. And actually, I'm much more interested, and I'm going to stop and have a think. And, you know, when you finally open up to everybody else, you know, well, what is it? You know, how do I get in on this? That's a great way of, you know, almost having, well, there's a scarcity around this, and I want to be part of it, so I'm much more inclined to sign up. The other thing trade shows could be really good for is bring one of your clients with you, a high value or high profile client, bring them along almost as a live case study. It's a win-win because they get to talk about their business, which is what they want to do, but they're promoting your business at the same time. And people who are walking past go, oh, what's going on with these guys? Oh, so you work with SpiderGroup, how does that work? And they're telling people in the flesh how great you are. Obviously, only bring ones along that think you're great. That sort of should go without saying, but just in case. Again, it's giving a bit of love to that high value customer. that, oh, I've been invited to go and speak at this show. That's quite exciting. Obviously, if they're a customer who are super busy and not very responsive when you speak to them, they're probably not the one to ask. But if you engage with them a lot and there's kind of those opportunities to work together, then it's a really nice way of building. It's much more one-to-one communication. It's not that kind of automated communication to all of your customers, but it's a really exciting way to promote a particular customer. And if they are especially high value, then that's key. So timing. So hopefully this will answer the question that came up earlier. How often is too often? It's one of those marketing questions where the answer is it depends, which I know everybody hates, but I can't tell you should send 3 emails a month and that's perfect. It depends on your industry. It depends on your types of clients. It depends whether you're B2B or B2C. Generally, in a B2B environment, unless there are exceptional circumstances, like COVID, like I said, we changed our communication strategy quite dramatically at that point. But in normal circumstances, probably monthly. Unless you are putting out so much amazing, high quality, useful content that it can't even fit into a monthly roundup, you're generally looking at, picking out your best pieces, the most useful content that you've created in the last month, and sending that as an update. B2C is a little bit different. So, for example, I get weekly emails from e-commerce retailers because they have huge amounts of stock change, and to be honest, I've forgotten because it's sort of a bit throwaway. So if you've got just lots and lots and lots of new stuff coming in and it's B2C and it's slightly less, you're asking less time from the person looking at it, because that's quite an important element. So if I send a B2B email and it's got 4 or 5 links to different pieces of content or a survey I'd like someone to fill out, or a new ebook or white paper, it's got quite a lot in there because obviously I want to make it hugely valuable, but it does ask a little bit more time from the recipient. If I get an email from Game, it's usually, here are 5 new games. Are you interested in any of them? No? Okay, fine. It's taken me 30 seconds to scan. So think about the time you're asking of people, add it up over the frequency that you're sending these emails. So if I get 4 emails a month from Game, then great, I've spent 2 minutes on them. If I get 4 emails a month from a B2B company where I've got to spend 5 minutes looking at them, and maybe if the content's really good, spend half an hour reading the extra bits and pieces. If I send that weekly, all of a sudden it's a day. That's asking a lot from your audience. So think carefully about how often you should send it based on how much time you're requesting from people. During a free trial, for example, so if you've got, let's say, a software platform and you've got someone set up on a free trial, you're going to want to send more regular emails because it is part of the service delivery. So if it's a 7-day free trial, maybe not quite daily, but every 2 days. If it's a 30-day free trial, twice a week, because what you want that content to be is, obviously you've got your welcome email, thank you for signing up for a free trial. Then you need to do some, have you tried this feature? Or here are some top tips to getting the most out of that feature. And here are some FAQs. What you want is them to get the most out of their trial so that they become a paying customer. You should definitely think of free trial customers as customers. What we want to do is move them to the next phase of being a customer. So more frequent emails during that trial would be really beneficial. And then, towards the end of the trial, you've got some countdowns. So if your trial ends in 3 days, have you tried these features? Your trial ends in 2 days. Do you have any questions? Would you like to speak to someone for half an hour about how to get the most out of the system? your trial ends tomorrow, make sure you don't lose all your stuff. You sort of build that frequency up towards the end of the trial to make sure you're giving useful content. As I've said throughout this webinar, useful content is the most important, but building up so that you've got, that constant communication with somebody at that, essentially, if we look at the funnel, they're at the very bottom of the funnel, just waiting to fall out into your customer pool. Sorry, that metaphor went a little awry. So free trials, definitely a time when you bump up the frequency. And new client onboarding, particularly if you're onboarding a complex or involved service, if that project's going to take, months. So HubSpot onboarding, if you go through HubSpot, it's a minimum of 3 months. So obviously during that time, you don't want to just check in once a month. You don't want to communicate too infrequently because, you don't know if that client's getting on with the system, or if they, at the end of that 3 months, are thinking, I'm not sure this was a good idea. So, when we're onboarding a new client, in the first few months, account managers will have weekly calls with those clients to make sure that everything is being captured, everything's being covered. And like I said, those are generally calls so that there is that personal contact. Obviously, this is service delivery rather than standard communications. So that is, you sort of build that into your who gets a phone call metric. But that regular contact to make sure that the customer feels loved, feels like you're paying attention to their onboarding, and also doesn't get buyer's remorse, early on in the process. So I hope that has answered the question from earlier. One thing, keep an eye on your unsubscribe rates for your emails. If you increase the frequency of your emails and your unsubscribe rates go up, chances are you're sending things too frequently. I know I've unsubscribed for things when I think I have seen so many emails from you this week, I'm done with it. And that's quite a common thing for people to do. So yeah, keep a close eye on those and make sure that you're, sorry, I'm slightly distracted by James's video. He's suddenly sitting in the dark. He's in the office today and we have motion activated lights. And obviously there are very few people in the office. So every now and again, you're suddenly plunged into darkness. Sorry, I completely lost track of what I was saying there. So that's on timing. I'm going to pause for a moment just in case that hasn't answered the question, and whoever did answer the question wants to pop up with any further clarification.
Well, so I have actually just building on that, a question really. So in your view, should obviously email's one channel, how would you sort of think about it in terms of other types of communication you would do and trying to get the level right as well? So obviously phone calls or meetings or I don't know, Facebook posts, like obviously, how would you think about that in terms of communication levels?
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So I think phone calls, I would peg at the same sort of frequency as emails, unless there is obviously something specific going on that you need to contact an individual customer about. So what I'm talking here is more kind of mass communication. Individual customers, if something's happened, something's broken, there's a new element to their service that they absolutely desperately need and they've asked about, then you communicate with them one-on-one as required. So you would pick up the phone and say, hey, James, we've just released that update that you asked us about a few weeks ago. Just wanted to personally let you know that's happened because you've already shown an interest. So in terms of account management, monthly calls, monthly meetings, depending on the client. Again, if you've got a client who's super busy, they're really happy with everything, your service is one that they don't need a lot of input in, it just happens, then it might be a quarterly account meeting. It may be that, you work on your tiered basis and you say, well, the clients who are the largest or the spending the most or have the most services get monthly and everyone else gets quarterly. It's very much a case of looking at your database and saying who needs the most love, who is the most important to my business, who will absolutely hate it if I contact them constantly. Because I think, some clients, you can usually tell in the very early stages, just want to be left alone. That's not to say you should never communicate with them. It's still very important to communicate with them, but maybe not as frequently, and making sure it's absolutely spot on useful to them.
So one of the things that I would sort of, I guess, add at this point is that depending on the disk profile of the person receiving it, that might also inform how you might want to communicate with them a little bit. So for instance, someone that's a high I in the disk profile would probably love to have a chat or a video. Someone that's a C potentially would like to have a much more informative, sort of detail-based email. So all the other bits that sort of Natalie said could be slightly modified based on the sort of the disk profile of the person. So I don't like too much over communication unless it's like purposely gets us towards our goals, because I'm quite high D. But actually, so just thinking about that as well is quite useful.
Yeah, that's really, really useful. Thank you, James. So if you don't know DISC, I would highly recommend learning a bit more about it. Surrounded by Idiots is a book I've recommended quite a few times recently. It's a great intro to the different DISC profiles. They do it based on color, but it's the same thing. And like James says, different profiles will like different styles of communication. Like James, I'm a high D. Send me a very quick email, tell me exactly what you want from me or exactly what you're giving me, and get out. Whereas, someone who's a high I, give me a call, have a chat. Show the love, because that's much more in line with their profile. And so the timing, again, Ds probably want less frequent communication, Is more frequent, and then Cs and S's, it's probably much more around the content. So yeah, do have a look at DISC and see if you can work out. The more familiar you get with it, the more you can work out what your clients' profiles are likely to be. And you could even segment your database based on DISC profile, giving you a really great way of going, okay, well, this list of people needs a different style of communication. So we've got some pitfalls. And so this first one, I think, we've possibly covered it a little bit already, but know enough about individual customers to know when to hold back. Don't send your super happy, jolly emails to unhappy customers. Make sure you segment your database so that they are not getting the marketing focused emails until you've repaired that relationship. Because if I get a, hey, we're great, we won an award, hey, we're great, we've just released this, from a company that I'm unhappy with, going to feel particularly negative about it. So, well, actually, you're not great because I have all these problems. So don't be tone deaf to how your customers are feeling. If you have enough customers, try doing a net promoter score survey and see what proportion of your customers are happy enough to be a promoter, unhappy enough to be a detractor, pretty neutral. The neutral ones, obviously you want to bring them up towards promoter. So maybe think about sending them gentle nudge emails into how great things are. You don't want to be explicit. Whereas the super happy emails talk about how great everything is, because that's the thing that's exciting to them. Another pitfall is to not use personalization. So a completely impersonal email doesn't add much value. It is useful in some contexts when it is, again, going back to COVID, it's a message from the CEO to all of our customers. That's a slightly different thing, because then it is personal in the sense that the CEO himself or herself is sending this email. But generally, if you're sending a marketing email or a check-in sequence, you want to use personalization. If you've got the right CRM, you can use personalization tokens. So it just pulls in their name, potentially their company name. It may be the date of our last meeting. all sorts of different, anything in your CRM should be able to be used as a personalization token, so that even though you're sending a batch of 50 or 100 emails that are all identical, I'll still get one that says, "Hi, Natalie, we haven't spoken since March. It'd be great to catch up." So that kind of personalization, even though James gets, "Hi, James, we haven't spoken since January," I haven't had to do anything extra. I just drop those personalization tokens in, but it makes the person receiving them feel a lot more positive and feel like it's personal. And this one, I know I've said it before, but I'm going to keep saying it because it is one of the most important elements of marketing and communications across the board. Send useful emails. Share things that are useful to your audience and useful to them, not things that you think are useful. Look at your personas, look at their pain points, look at what matters, and make sure your content is geared to that. Because if you just send out generic content or content that's, as I've mentioned before, highly self-promotional, it's not giving them a reason to open your next email. And your next email may be super important. So really, really stick to useful content. Like I said, I will bang on about this one forever because it is absolutely vital.
I mean, the number of times I get emails come in that say, "Brilliant, we've either merged or we've opened a new office, we've done this." And I'm like, why do I care? And that's a bit cold, but it's like, it doesn't link it back to any benefit that I receive. So it could be they've got a new office, which means they can provide a much better product or service. But if they don't tell me that and like link it to me, then ultimately well, I'm not going to bother opening it again.
Precisely. And thank you, because that is exactly the sentence I was going to say. When you write content, marketing or customer communications, ask yourself from the customer's perspective, why do I care? And they don't care because you care. They just don't. Even the really happy customers don't care that much. So if it's, we've opened a new office, immediately ask yourself, why do I care? I don't. I don't care that you have a new office. If it's, your database has my address and you can see the new office is closer to my house than the previous ones, it's, you can come meet us at such and such. It's not about the new office, it's about making my life easier. So we've got more locations, so you can come into store wherever you want. Why do I care? I care because my life is better because of this information. If there is no reason that will make my life better and there's no reason for me to care, don't bother sending it. At most, put it as a banner at the bottom of an email that is full of content that is useful, that I would care about. But yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. Ask yourself, why should the reader care about this? And that is the end of all of that, which means we do have some time for questions. The next webinar is a tech webinar. It's about storing data in Office 365, which I'm quite looking forward to because I seem to have data in all sorts of bits and areas of Office 365, and James will ask me where a file is, and I have to try and remember where I've put it. So I'm looking forward to learning how to be a lot more efficient with that on the 28th of July.
There are a couple of questions. So one of the questions was, obviously, if you're creating content for, I guess, more direct communications, how would you think about like repurposing that content?
Okay, cool. Yeah, repurposing content is fantastic because obviously you spend time, effort, and money making content. You want to use it in as many places as possible. So you can do it both ways round. So you can create content specifically for customers and think how to repurpose it for marketing in general, and vice versa. If it's customer focused, so let's say you've sent an email and it's about new product features that only customers can access. You would still want to include that kind of content on your website as new product features you could access if you became a customer. If it's, so let's go back to our COVID example, we sent customer emails. It was very focused on communicating with our customers about what was happening. But we also put a page on our website with some of that content. We didn't have all of the content. Some of it was very specific to being a customer, but the bulk of it was relevant, and it's not particularly exciting marketing content, but what it means is anyone visiting our website can see that we have made statements about what's going on. We're not head in the sand ignoring it. And so that's an example of customer content that's used for non-customers, or for prospects or anyone who visits the website. Then the other way around, you don't have to adapt things quite as much if you're using marketing content and sending it to customers. What let's say you've got a blog post that you've put out that's particularly useful. You'd put it in your customer email. You'd just have some explanation in there as to why you're sharing it with your customer, rather than needing to rewrite it for them. You might say, we've also got some, extra CTAs. So if you can do smart content on your website, this is something that's going to be big in the future, where if someone visits your website and the CRM has them stored as a customer, maybe the CTA at the bottom of that blog post is different. That says, find out more about how to unlock this within your portal, or give us a call if you don't know how to set up this part of your service. So having those dynamic CTAs would be a really great way to have the right kind of content at the bottom, top and tail of a blog post. If someone comes to it from and they're not a customer, they'll get a CTA saying, learn more about becoming a customer. Better than that, because that was a terrible CTA, but you understand the point.
Great, thank you. So the other question that we had was, do you have an example of any companies that are doing customer communication really well?
Yes.
Other than us, of course.
Other than us, we're brilliant, obviously. But there's always room for improvement. So if you're a customer and you're watching this and you think we can improve, let me know privately, not in the chat. So the first example that came to mind is a B2C example. And it's Bloom and Wild. They sell flowers. They're an online florist, and they sell flowers that can go through the letterbox. And I get regular emails from them. I usually open them because it's seasonal. It's, these are the new blooms that you can get now. But the thing that they do that I found really powerful is they sent an email to their entire database prior to Mother's Day saying, we know this can be a tough time of year. If you don't want emails about Mother's Day for any reason, click here and we will make sure you don't get them. And my mum's alive and actually loves flowers, and I bought her flowers, so it wasn't a problem for me. But I know people who have contentious relationships, or they've lost their mums or whatever. And so having a company consider the feelings of its customers and say, we will communicate with you differently if you need us to, I thought that was really, really powerful. I think in a B2B context, I'm not sure how you would emulate that, but thinking about ways to be empathetic to your customers is really important.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Good example. That's all for the questions.
Fabulous.
So as Natalie said, we have another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks' time around SharePoint storage. I'm looking forward to doing that one. Haven't quite figured out how many diagrams I'm going to use yet. And as always, we run a weekly online networking session called AltNet, which is on Wednesdays. So if you go to spidergroup.com/altnet, you can sign up to attend one of those, and we look forward to seeing you there.
That's ALTNET.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Natalie. That was really good.
Thank you for listening. And if anyone has any questions about customer communications, please do feel free to send me an email or connect on LinkedIn, get in touch. Always happy to talk about this kind of stuff.